Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning.
A podcast where we share with you great insights about everything family from over 30 years of parenting 7 kids and over a decade of equipping parents through our Crazy Cool Family ministry.
So let us inspire and equip you to build your best family.
Welcome back to the Season 7 Summer Series. Season 7 Summer Series. Season 7 Summer Series.
You're supposed to say it 7 times.
So, hope your summer's going great. Hope you are, if you're listening.
Deep into summer now, yeah. June 24th at this point, if you're listening on the date. If not, welcome,
yes.
Whenever you do listen.
Maybe you're traveling back in time. But,
yeah.
but if it's summer for you, and then you're in the middle of summer, and we've been talking about in our summer series this summer, all about the parent-to-kid, the kid-to-kid relational lines, topics you can practice with your kids as you have a plan for summer. And just as a reminder, we kicked off a few weeks ago a deep dive. If you go to our website, you go to the shop, you go to Deep Dives, there's a summer to remember deep dive in which you can purchase and just get your plan for summer. It just has so many things to help you. It's not too late to have a plan for summer. And so in this podcast today, we're going to talk about the topic of the day is, we call it who's in charge, but what we're really talking about is how do you develop leaders during the summer? How do you help your kids? What can you do? We're always trying to help our kids to become leaders. Now, maybe leaders, big time leaders, but everybody's a leader in their world somewhere. Could be just in their home. It could be in their, eventually in their school, on their sports teams. We want our kids to have leadership qualities, and summer's a great time to develop that.
Absolutely. I would definitely say that you are raising leaders. You are called to raise leaders. The kingdom needs leaders. And so we have the opportunity as parents to train children up in the way they should go as they lead, as they influence and impact every room that they're in, organization that they're a part of, group that they're with. And so, and so we're excited to talk about that. Who's in charge and where leaders are built and grown are underneath your roof. In your family dynamics is where those leader skills start showing up. And it might look like a lot of fighting as 2 leaders are fighting against each other for wanting what they want. And we talked about that in the last podcast, how to fight well and knowing that conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict's a good thing. And so if we were to mesh the 2 together, then if there's a lot of conflict, then know that you've got some leaders on your hands, and that's good.
Yeah, the first thing, though, as a leader in your home is if you want your kids to be leaders, and the summer's a great time, this is your opportunity to be the example of a leader. And so what are you doing to lead well? What kind of leader do you want your kids to be? Well, first of all, be that leader to them in the summer. Do you want to be a leader who's always griping all the time? Do you want your kids to be that kind of leader that complain and are harsh? Then guess what? Then you don't be harsh and complain. Be a leader that brings joy and energy to whatever you're doing. Do you want your kids to be a leader who don't really have a plan and just waffle around all the time? Then you don't be a leader you be a leader that has a plan and doesn't waffle around all the time. So you have the summer is a time when the school's not planning things for you.
Right.
Sure, maybe church is, but it's usually different about planning things for you. You get to step in and say, hey, here's the plan, and you get to be a leader. So guess what that does? It's teaching your kids to be leaders, because guess what? They're watching who? They're watching you, and they're watching you be a leader. They're watching your countenance. They're watching your leadership ability.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have a podcast, episode 158, Leadership is Worth the Fight, with one of our dear friends, Julie Pierce, who has a whole business ministry on building leaders. And so as we're throwing around this word leadership, if you're intimidated by that, like, wait a minute, I'm not a leader, I'm not leading, I don't know how to build leaders, then go listen to that podcast for sure, because she will inspire you and equip you on super practical things to do when it comes to raising the leaders up in your family this summer.
Yeah, we were reminded too that We do something different a little bit every summer, just like we're doing here. And if you want to, as you look at the dynamics, we're going to talk about the dynamics of our changing family every summer with 7 kids. But, in episodes 172 to 178, we actually did that summer. We did a summer series called Who Knows Your Kids Best, where we interviewed each of our kids and we talked about, some of that was about, how we did in the summers and how we did, parenting. And so that's another series of podcasts that's great to go back and listen to get a feel for the dynamics of family and how it can impact you this summer. But let's think about that for a minute. Suzanne, we had every summer there was different dynamics because
every summer they were a year older.
Exactly. And so kids would, with 7 kids, some would be in the house, some would eventually be out of the house. And really for, a few years there, man, it was a lot of kids in the house all summer.
Oh, I remember one year. So the boys were all still little, and Madeline, Macy, both were nannying, so they brought over the 2 or 3 kids that they were nannying, and it was like a daycare. It was so much fun. We had little kids starting from 10 years down to babies. It was so much fun.
But so how did we manage it all the time? And then, different ages, different kids, different activities, and how do you develop, and what are we talking about when we talking about developing leaders in that? Well, guess what? The parent's in charge, but you can also delegate responsibility.
Oh, yeah. I would say that one of the foundational pillars of building a leader is responsibility. Is to give them responsibility and help them to see that, or help them do it successfully, show them how to do it successfully, let them do it successfully. I would even say to maybe even give them responsibility that's just a little bit above what they think they can handle.
In other words, let them fail.
Yeah, for sure. A little bit above what they can handle so that they can grow into it and then realize, oh, I can handle, fail and then succeed. And because, come on, the success after a failure is the sweetest success of all.
Man, so often in our culture today, we don't want our kids to make mistakes. And yet, therefore, as parents, we do everything for them. And we think that mistakes are going to damage their self-esteem and handled, if they're handled incorrectly, yes, they can. But so often, where does the Bible say we learn? It doesn't say we learn through good things. It says we learn through adversity. We learn through suffering. Mm-hmm. We learn through the having to go to the Lord with things. And right now, like for that 5-year-old, you're their God. And so when they have to go to you and get help, and you help them in a kind and compassionate way to see, and you give them responsibility, and you let them make mistakes. And so they're, like we said, during the school year, a lot of things are structured for them. In the summer, things get a little bit more where we can have the opportunity to say, and it may be something as trivial as, go get that trash and bring it to me.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's list some things they were responsible for.
Yeah, it could be, it could be that you have 2 siblings working together to clean up some things in the yard, or things like that.
Yeah, I remember that we would turn over the kitchen. You guys clean up the kitchen, or like you said, the yard, or that we'd clean out the garage, and we'd put, okay, older sibling, you're in charge of, this project. Or there was a couple of the sisters that shared a room, and so I'd be like, okay, we're going to clean your closet out. You guys do that. Come get me if you need some help.
I remember when we'd have them clean the kitchen. I will have everybody remain nameless, but someone would say, every time, this sibling has to go to the bathroom, every time they clean up or whatever. And you just, we'll talk to them about that. We can help you with that.
We'll save them the dirtiest dishes of all when they get finished going to the bathroom.
And so, it's just so funny to watch all their little struggles, because being a leader of something and having to work together through the struggles of that really does bring out just the most interesting issues. And again, we talked about last podcast having summer be a laboratory a laboratory in which you are developing things in your family, because you get so many opportunities to do it that you don't otherwise get, usually during the normal school year. And one of those is to develop that leadership, is to assign. So if you are, back to what we were saying, if you are the kind of parent that really doesn't want your kid to make a mistake, maybe rethink that and give them some opportunities to grow and really realize that. And then, I was reading a book the other day called The Gap and the Gain, and it talked about how it's not about the gap. You don't look at the perfection versus where they are. Look at the gain. Look at what they've developed and what they've learned through it. Celebrate that, and don't be so frustrated with the lack of perfection. And then you'll see your kids want to develop as leaders. What if they want to take, don't you want kids that want to take responsibility, that want to take on projects? Well, guess what? In the summer, you get the chance to develop that muscle, because you get opportunities, if you look for them, to make it happen. Just like we were talking about last podcast, you get opportunities to help your kids avoid fighting or to work through the fighting. You also get the opportunities to develop leadership.
Yeah. And so with leadership, responsibility is one of the pillars to build leadership. Anything around the house is great. Anything outside, grocery shopping, I'd always send, two to just get your brain thinking, okay, I want to give them responsibilities.
So you're saying that during grocery shopping, you would send a kid, not send them to the grocery store, but
on their own. It'd be great. I'd sit in the car, listen to a podcast.
But like you would say, hey, go get this, and you would send them to with different responsibilities to bring back to you.
Exactly. And so then, I got ahead of myself. So just looking for ways to give responsibility, to delegate some of those responsibilities. Not so much so that you get a break, although that is a side benefit, but because you are showing them, teaching them, training them.
Looking for even outside opportunities, like, our church, when our kids were growing up, had Vacation Bible School. And so there were so many opportunities. The younger kids would be, or the older kids would be, they were chiefs. And the middle schoolers, or maybe the elementary schools, were certain roles within leadership. And then other ones participated. And Suzanne was up there with different people. I did some teaching, so it was but that week, it was an opportunity we shut down as a family pretty much everything else, and we did Vacation Bible School.
Right.
And there were so many, and we built relationships within the siblings, within the family, as well as there were leadership opportunities for the older kids.
I love that. So look outside of your home too for responsibilities. Do you have a grandparent that lives nearby? Can your child go do things for them where they can be responsible? Do you have somebody that's got some little kids that they could be in charge of? That's another way to teach responsibility, to put them in charge of something or someone. And then rotate it up a little bit if you can, and let's say you've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. Sometimes let the 5-year-old be in charge. Yeah. And let them exercise their leadership muscles a little bit.
Or, like if we go on vacation, we would try to say, okay, today you guys are in charge of this day. And what are we going to do? We're going to this park, so maybe it was an amusement park, and they had to figure out that, age appropriate, of course, had to figure out what we were going to do at that park today, and what were the plans, what were the best rides, and when should we, how are they going to figure that out? We're always there to help them, but they love that. They love to take charge. Oh yeah, we're going to do this. And many times they did it better than we would do it, because they knew the technology, or they knew something that would happen.
Yeah, one of the things I remember we did the first time we did it, and we still do it today, is delegating meals on vacation. And so we'd take an older sibling and a younger sibling, and we'd match them up, and they would do a meal. Even if it was frozen pizza, they would be in charge of that meal. And so it taught them to be have ownership in the vacation, but it also taught them to lead out and to serve the family.
So look at the dynamics of your family, and we know everybody's different, but we might have kids that were similar ages. We might have kids that were very different in ages. So maybe a couple of those went to a sports camp together, because they were young enough, they were in age enough together, or close enough, is what the word I'm looking for, that where it could benefit them. And then, so for example, then maybe the older sibling, you say, hey, make sure you watch out for your younger sister.
For sure.
Again, leadership. You're the older one, so make sure that you have the role of watching out. She's only 6 and you're 8. So you know what's going on. You know how to play basketball or whatever, and she's just learning. So make sure that she doesn't feel, and encourage her. Make sure that she's taken care of, and so you're just instilling that leadership through the experience.
Yeah, I love that. And so one of the things to do as you're raising leaders is to pay attention to the birth order and know that your firstborns are probably going to gravitate toward that leadership role the most. And that is great. And know that your younger siblings are watching that older sibling, which is beautiful. And by all means, give them every opportunity to lead, to grow that. But once again, remember, we're raising them all to be leaders. And so how do you help that middle child become more of a leader? They're usually going to be a peacemaker between the olders and the youngers anyway, so they've got that in mind. And so maybe you highlight that. Will you lead in peacemaking? Will you lead in helping your siblings get along with each other? And then the younger ones, they're usually like attention seeking, maybe a little bit more rebellious, outgoing, usually a lot of fun that the younger kids are. How do you encourage them to lead? Okay, you know what? You're so much fun. Lead us in a game tonight as a family. Show us how to have some fun. We want to be fun like you.
I think it's a great idea what you're talking about with having younger children lead. And then you really make it, then you talk to the older ones and you're like, okay, maybe it's a 5-year-old and you're like, and maybe you have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. And so you say, okay, 5-year-old is going to lead this. Now it might be a little silly because they're 5 years old and, they don't really know what they're doing. You know what you're doing but so we're not going to tell them what to do. We're just going to kind of go with the flow tonight and make it fun.
Right.
And so now you've prepared them, but you're letting the 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old so just loves it that everybody's listening to them, and they love it that they get to be in charge. And so you are, think about it. I think you can tell as we're doing this is just asking you to think differently about summer. It's what we've been doing all through the series. Think differently about summer. Look for ways to unite your sibling, your kids, and look for leadership opportunities such as that. Be creative and watch. And sometimes it's just not going to work, and that's okay. And sometimes it's going to be, wow, that's amazing. And you're going to be able, it can be as simple as, we're going on a walk tonight. Where do you want to go? And you get to pick how far we're going and where we're going to go. Well, I want to go left and go to this park over here and come back. Great. That's where we're going. And you lead. Do you know how to get there? I don't know if I know how to get there. Well, if you don't, we'll help you, but you lead out and see where we're going. Those are ways, simple things like that are like, you're just telling your kid, we tell you all the time, tell them who they are. And what you're doing is you're telling them you're a leader. You're telling them you believe in them, that they're gonna lead us to the park, and so and that's a big job for that 5 or 6-year-old.
Yeah, and so a leader, leadership, it's filled with encouragement, guidance, initiative. Isn't that what we want for our kids? Don't we want them to be a good steward? I mean, to manage. We want them in the top of management. We want our kids to be at the top of whatever situation that they're in. We want to build, like we keep saying, build that leadership muscle in them. And it starts at home. And it starts in the summer with all this intentional time that you've got to get to have with them.
Think about the reason we talk about building leadership in summertime is because there's room for failure. There's so much more room for failure. There's so much more room for, to have to readjust because the timing is different. When there's 8 activities going on during the school year and everybody's got to be somewhere, it's hard to...
You're leading, Mama. Get in the car. Get your uniform.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. But summer is a time for development. It's a time for relationship. I mean, again, not that you don't do it during the school year. It's not like we just, but there's just seasons of life when things are easier and there's more capability in doing it. And summer is one of those times. I hope you see how we're trying to get you to rethink summer. And we talked about it before in another podcast that We don't want you to be parents that say, oh my goodness, I can't wait for school to start. It's like the parents that say, oh my goodness, I hate teenagers. They're so hard.
Makes
It's
me
like,
crazy.
No. Let's don't do that. Let's be parents that are like, we love summer because it's a time for investment in the family.
Yeah. And so as we wrap up, I just want to say, what would it look like if you were to have a conversation with your kids and say, are you a leader? What do you know what a leader is? What do you think about being a leader? And go ahead and get their buy-in on this whole idea of being molded and shaped into a leader. And start speaking that, as Don said, in identity, start speaking that over them. You're a leader. And start using that words, will you lead us?
So many opportunities in summer. Just filled with opportunities. It's a slower pace. There's not as many responsibilities. Take advantage. Go listen to the past podcasts we've done so far in the summer series to get more ideas on how to help your kids fight clean, how to have a plan for summer, and today we're talking about thinking about during the summer in looking for opportunities to instill leadership in your kids.
Yeah.
Great opportunities. We hope that this helps you have a vision for summer. Remember, parents, be intentional about summer with a loose plan that's flexible but purposeful, and you'll find that you will have much more enjoyable summer. You won't be dreading summer. You will not be looking forward to fall as much as you will just love summer and love the impact. Remember, only summer you got this summer. It's when it's over, it's over. You're not going to get it back. So make
Summer
the most of it.
2025 rocks.
Yeah, make the most of it. And as always, go be crazy. crazycoolfamily.com.